The inflation picture. A veg thali, a veg plate in the month of July, now is 34% more expensive than what it was in the month of June. This is according to the data that has been compiled by Crisil. Of course, tomatoes, no prizes for guessing, they've had a large part to play in the kind of spike that we are seeing on the prices of a veg thali. But this Crisil report is also taking into account the prices of cereals, of pulses, of broilers and vegetables and spices, besides edible oil and cooking gas. Potatoes, onions, chillies and cumin, every ingredient that actually goes into making Indian food is seeing the sharp jump in prices. The question is, who is to blame and what is the road ahead on the food inflation front? We'll delve into that with our guests joining us. But of course, here's a report that we've put together. My colleague Aishwarya has been out in the markets getting us a ground report.
At a time when most vegetables as well as tomato are seeing prices skyrocketing, related products of tomatoes like ketchups, purees are still unchanged at this point. Take a look at HUL's Kisan, the 425 gram pack, which is 50 rupees. The non-garlic and non-onion one is 80 rupees, the double the price at this point. It's still unchanged. 1 kg bottle of Kisan is 155 rupees. And a 1 kg bottle of Maggi is 160 rupees. And topping the list of them all is Heinz ketchup, which is 240 rupees for a 900 gram pack. Now, among all of these, if you see, the tomato content or the tomato paste content is anywhere between 23% to 28%. And the rest of the 70% is all artificial ingredients in most of the ketchup bottles, if you've ever seen the labels. So that is not just the reason why the prices are unchanged in these purees as well as ketchups. It is because the suppliers who provide tomato paste to most of these brands have a buffer of almost 18 to 24 months, which means they've bought their tomato purees or tomato paste almost at a time when the tomato prices were very low, and they're future proof to any price fluctuations in the tomato prices at this point. That's one of the reasons why we don't see any sort of price surge or inflation in these products.
Tomato, if you see, all of these are perishables, and they are grown in particular seasons, and in off season particularly the production is low. This is obviously the off season, and every year in this particular season prices of things like tomatoes, capsicum, green chillies go up. Now this year obviously it's pretty high, multiple reasons for it, but if you see the key reasons, I would first of all see that there are some very larger things, and then there are some topical things. The larger things are there have been couple of years since rains have been extremely erratic in the agricultural belts of Maharashtra and largely India. Largely you could say climate change, you could say 10 other reasons. But this is happening, and since last couple of years, and hence it is having a very heavy impact on the production.
So like you said, it's going to exacerbate not just across tomato prices, but like you mentioned earlier, even onion prices. As of now, if you could tell us, the top 10 inflationary pressures that you're seeing in the vegetables that Kisan Connect is selling?
See, if you see, there are, and this is a category where consumers want to have very fresh produce directly from the farm, but at the same time people expect fair prices. Tomatoes, onions, potatoes are like basic staples. If you see in onions, again it has been a very difficult situation this year.
So there's pressure on multiple counts is what we're hearing in that report. Let's get further perspective from the people who put together that report over at Crisil. Pushan Sharma is the Director of Research there, and he's joining us along with Mitali Nikore, the founder and economist at Nikore Associates. Great to have you both with us. Let me begin by asking you, Pushan Sharma, about the findings of this research that has been conducted by Crisil. There are the biggest areas of pain as far as India's food inflation is concerned, and there's no prize for guessing. The impact of high tomato prices is kind of obvious, but clearly that's not the only factor. Do walk us through them.
Right. So we've seen, a lot of heavy rainfall in the month of July. If you look at the numbers for July, it's been about 13% above normal. The horticulture segment of agriculture, which comprises of fruits and vegetables, these are quite sensitive in nature in terms of their reaction to adverse rainfall or even temperature. And that is one critical reason that is causing this sharp jump in tomato prices. But if you look at some of the other commodities, we're seeing an inch up in onion prices as well. We're seeing that onion could actually spring a surprise in the coming months. And for that, we'll have to sort of zoom back to about February, where we saw a little high temperature than normal in the month of February, and then a lot of rainfall in the month of March. And what that has done is that's reduced the shelf life of the onion crop from 6 months to about 5 months for the Rabi season. And the Rabi season accounts for about 70% of onion production. And that's going to lead to some extension of the lean period during mid-September. And that could lead to a sharp increase in the onion prices further from the levels that we are seeing right now. In addition to that, spices as well, whether it is chili or cumin, that's seen a jump in prices. Ginger too, because of damage to the crop, which was stored in the month of July because of rainfall in Karnataka and Madhya Pradesh. That's also leading to a jump in ginger prices. What's sort of helping the thali price be stable or sort of bringing it down to some extent is on the non-veg side, broiler prices have been lower, and edible oil, the entire complex is also slightly lower. But other than that, most of the commodities are seeing an up move.
And that's going to have this telling impact on the overall food inflation story, Mitali. How has India historically managed this kind of high food inflation, seasonal as it may be, because of supply constraints, perhaps these weather-related issues like Pushan is talking about? Tell us how we've tackled it in the past and how differently we are taking it on this time around.
So thanks a lot, Vikram, for having me as always, and Pushan, great work. I mean, this really helps to contextualize and visualize inflation for a lot of people, and to really understand it. So this helps a lot. Now, I think, Vikram, I want to break down my response into two parts. The first part is to just bring out one or two key challenges that Pushan talked about, which is impacting inflation disproportionately this time. And I think that one major issue that he has talked about is around logistics infrastructure. Historically, if we look at the logistics infrastructure investment in this country, it has been low. And now we have a new national logistics policy. There's an uptick in logistics investment. And I think that's a very big difference, from the historical to the current situation, where it is clearly being recognized that warehousing, storage, cold storage facilities, and reefer trucks, these are key parts of our entire story of delivering fruits and vegetables as well as non-veg food to from production centers to consumption centers. And I think clearly this is coming out as one of the major reasons for a lack of climate resilience in our supply chains, right? And now the second part of my answer is to answer your question a little more directly. How did we do it in the past? This is actually also linked to transport and logistics. Earlier, we did not see such long lead times and lead kilometers that a particular food product traveled. If something was produced within a particular state, it was being sold in the consumption centers of that state. Now we are seeing that even fruits and vegetables are traveling greater, longer distances. But in order for that distance and that transport to be sustainable, to be climate resilient, and for the food to not get spoiled, we need to have better logistics facilities, which is what the investment needs to happen in. So I think previously, when we were managing a lot of these situations, there was government intervention in terms of managing the food prices, in terms of stabilizing the food prices, and also reducing the distance in which the commodities were traveling. In the current situation, we are not seeing either of those.
So when you do this kind of comparison, of course, it begs the question, Pushan Sharma, when it comes to this report in particular, how closely it actually reveals the pressure that is faced by the common man and his or her wallet, these kind of rising prices. How much of this is about the theory and the numbers and all about the economic assumptions, because I do believe that, we're not talking as much about the ability or the inability of the consumer to be able to digest the kind of price rise that we are talking about when it comes to a more expensive veg or non-veg thali. Pushan.
Right. So when we do such an analysis, what we do is we try to understand that what really composes a thali, what are the various ingredients that are there, and to make it as real as possible, we try to see the retail prices, and we go with government data coming from Ministry of Consumer Affairs on the retail prices of all of these commodities to understand that what is it that the consumer is paying, what are the ingredients that go into a thali to actually represent what is the cost pressure that the consumer is facing. Now, to the second part of your question, in terms of how does it dent the consumer's ability to absorb that cost, what the consumer would potentially do is reduce the amount of tomato, in this case, because it's seen a 233% rise in price month on month from June to July. The consumer would reduce the amount of tomato that he consumes. While we would keep the weight of tomato same, not reducing it as per the consumer behavior. So that's the only place where the consumer would be behaving slightly deviant from what the thali represents. But what this clearly shows is the kind of cost pressure that the consumer faces, and the consumer would be eating multiple thalis in a day, right? At least two. And that's what this actually report brings out, that the cost pressure being faced by the consumer is significant. At least in the month of July, the cost pressure can be clearly seen here.
Definitely seem to suggest that, Mitali, do weigh in on this, because as much as we are seeing this kind of dramatic rise in the expensiveness of a thali, whether or not it is veg or non-veg, the key question is affordability as far as India is concerned, the current state of the economy, because there is a phenomenon, perhaps it can be called that, where we are seeing FMCG, the demand go up, sales are moving up, and those numbers are showing as well. So is there some kind of explanation for this kind of phenomenon where we are also assessing the affordability even though we are seeing prices go up?
So I think, Vikram, what is happening currently is that the consumer is reacting very quickly, but our data systems are probably not keeping up to understand the consumer choices.
Right.
Because FMCG data clearly comes with a 1 or 2 week lag. The vegetable mandi prices are being published in real time. We are getting inflation rates with a 1 month lag. So, when we are studying all of this data and we're trying to put it together, we are not actually being able to differentiate between leading indicators and lagging indicators. So I would say that FMCG spending is a little bit of a lagging indicator. Inflation rates are also a lagging indicator. But what the choices that, Pushan is talking about in terms of the real-time choices the consumer is making with the actual thali is the real current contemporary picture that we should be seeing. And in fact, in the future, we would be seeing maybe inflation rates go up slightly on food inflation. But now, it's also important to understand that a consumer requires different types of commodities. So if her budget is 200 rupees, I'm going to spend, on food as well as my FMCG products. But the prices of food used to be 50%. Now they've gone up to 60 or 70% of that 200 rupees that she has to spend. She will cut back on FMCG. That, because food is more of a necessity than FMCG products. That is a given. So that is why I'm saying that FMCG spending is more of a lagging indicator, and in the future we'll start to see those trends reverse.
Right. So one may be coming at the cost of the other, so to speak, and we'll have to wait for all that data to be able to understand what's actually happening at a given point in time. I understand that. Pushan, many thanks for joining us, for bringing us the salient features of the kind of research that you've conducted and the larger takeaways from it. Mitali, thanks for decoding what's currently going on the food inflation picture. We will keep tracking all these moves and it'll be interesting to see how the RBI's next policy decision is going to consider the current rate of food inflation. Thank you.